Hello everyone. I'm C. Rohit Grover, and welcome back to the second lecture of the Audit Committee and Corporate Governance chapter. So, we all know that we were already completed the first lecture on Audit Committee and Corporate Governance. So, in the Audit Committee and Corporate Governance, what we have done so far, we have nothing but completed what? We have completed the legal framework. We have completed the legal framework of Audit Committee and Corporate Governance chapter, and we also understood the meaning of audit committee, comparison of audit committee under the LODR regulations with what the Companies Act, and also we have also understood what is the audit committee's powers and what are the audit committee's roles and functions. So today we are going to start from the topic where we left in the last time. So to the last time, I think in the last time we have already done, if you can see that we are done with the legal framework. We also understood what basically is LODR. So everyone just repeat in your head, what is LODR? LODR stands for listing obligations and disclosures requirement, right? Listing obligations and disclosures requirements. So listing obligation and disclosure requirement applicable for which entities? Are listed entities. Which listed entities? Which are having their designated securities listed in any of the stock exchange. So which designated securities? All that we have already discussed earlier, right? So I made you write the class notes also along with the right. Then I already told you that LODR is nothing but the replacement of clause 49 listing agreement. When the LODR came on 2nd September 2015 by replacing the clause 49 listing agreement. Then we also understood what is the difference between audit committee of LODR and audit committee of 177, where I told you where it is applicable, how many members, what should be the requirement of independent directors, how many meetings in a calendar years, who is going to be the company secretary, what should be the gap between the two meetings, what is the qualification of all those people, and we need a one financial expert also, what is the quorum requirement. So each and every thing I have already told you. And one more thing, I already told you one amendment that if you are a listed company with the special rights equity shares, if you are a listed company, if I'm not wrong, I told you already, if you are a company with the, yes, if you are a listed company with the outstanding special right equity shares, superior right equity shares, then in that case your audit committee should have all the independent directors only. I hope we have already discussed about that. And let me tell you now, so many students might be having a confusion ki sir, what do you mean by outstanding special rights equity shares? Sir, outstanding special right equity shares are nothing but called equity shares with differential rights. If I'm not wrong, in the Companies Act, we have already discussed this topic, equity shares with the differential rights. So those are those category of equity shares who wants the equity shares with either the less than the voting rights what the normal are getting, or more than the voting rights what the normal are getting. That is known as equity shares with differential rights. And if I'm not wrong, recently the amendment has also come. Earlier there was a 26% maximum cap was there on issuing the equity shares with differential rights, but now 26% has been increased to 74%. But that is under the Companies Act. We are talking about that companies that equity shares with differential rights are known as what? Are known as equity shares having special rights or superior rights when it comes to the listed entity. So all these things we have already discussed that day. That means in the previous chapter, in the previous topic, we also discussed about the powers of the audit committee, and most importantly, so many roles and responsibilities. If I'm not wrong, I told you if you already have an idea of Caro 2016, just leave the clause number 6, 12 and 16. Just leave the, we are doing the revision, that's why we are going fast. So leave the clause number 6, 12 and 16. In the remaining clauses, if you know the name, just add the word called to monitor. That will become the first 13 points of the roles and functions. So audit committee is also the one who is going to see the oversight of the financial reporting framework relating to financial statement. Audit committee is the one which is going to recommend the remuneration, appointment, and terms of appointment of the statutory auditor. Audit committee is the one which is going to discuss the issues with the internal auditor. Audit committee is the one which is going to sit with the management and going to review what it is going to review the auditor's report and financial statement before it is getting approved by the board of directors. Audit committee is the one to ensure that the all the proceeds issued via IPO or FPO or rights shares have been properly utilized for the purpose for which it was raised. Audit committee is the one which gives the approval for the related party transaction. Audit committee is the one which approves the candidature of chief financial officer. Audit committee is the one which is going to maintain the whistleblower policy, or also known as vigil mechanism. And audit committee is the one which is going to discuss the interim financial reporting statements. Means what? Quarterly financial statements with the management before getting it approval of board of directors. Audit committee is the one which is going to always monitor the performance, the efficiency and the independence level of statutory auditor. Audit committee is the one which has to ensure that the internal financial control systems and risk management process in the entity is going on. Audit committee is the one which is always going to determine the nature and scope of a statutory auditor before starting off an audit, and some post audit concerns. So the audit committee is the one which is going to always be in touch with their internal audit department and check whether the structure, the people, the efficiency of the department is meeting the expectations or not. If I'm not wrong, whatever I have discussed, that might be there in front of you in all the list. So all the roles of the audit committee we are already done with. Now, very important thing we have to understand. Very, very important thing. It has been asked 3 times in your examination. So what has been asked? Review of information by the audit committee. Briefly explain the review of information by the audit committee. Basically, what are the mandatory things the audit committee has to review? Are you getting the point? So now we are going to start our second lecture relating to audit committee and corporate governance. So basically, audit committee shall mandatorily review the following. What are the things they have to review? Management discussion and analysis of financial condition and results of the operation. Actually, it is one of the report that is called management discussion and analysis report. What is that? MDAR, management discussion and analysis report. What do you mean by management discussion? It is that report where the management's discussion and their analysis on the financial condition of the company and the results of the operations of the company will be given. The audit committee is the one which is mandatorily. There are total 6 matters which the audit committee has to review. Mandatorily, there are 6 matters which the audit committee has to review. Sir, what are the 6 matters? Matter number 1, management discussion and analysis of financial condition and results of operation. Audit committee review number 1. Review number 2, statement of significant related party transactions. Remember one thing, significant related party transaction in the Companies Act also we have a dedicated section on that, section number 188. It is the audit committee which will review the related party transactions. So audit committee has to see that the related party transactions with the related parties are being done at arm's length price. Which price? Arm's length price. At arm's length price, if the audit committee thinks that the transactions are happening with the related party the arm's length price, no problem. But if it is at non-arm's length price, remember, if it is at non-arm's length price, then the audit committee will monitor its related party transactions mandatorily. So statement of significant related party transactions as defined by the audit committee submitted by the management. So what are the 2 reviews? Some management discussion and analysis report, and the second one, statement of related party transaction. Third one, management letters and letters of internal control weaknesses issued by the statutory auditor. I don't know how many of you remember your intermediate and IPCC level, but there was one standard called SA 265. So what was SA 265? Communicating the weaknesses of internal control systems with TCWG. Who does that? Statutory auditor does that. So when the statutory auditor does the statutory audit of the company, it is his responsibility to review the internal control system, evaluate the internal control system, test the internal control system. After reviewing, evaluating and testing of internal control system, whatever the weaknesses he came to know, it is his responsibility to draft a letter of weaknesses and report it to those charged with governance. Now that letter which he has to communicate it to those charged with the governance, that letter we are talking about. Now he has to send this letter to whom? Letter of weaknesses to whom? Audit committee. So what are the 3 matters to be reviewed by the audit committee mandatorily? Sir, point number 1. One is management discussion and analysis report. Sir, point number 2, significant related party transactions. And point number 3, the letter of weaknesses on internal control system issued by the which auditor? Statutory auditor. Now the same letter is also going to be issued by the which auditor? Internal auditors, head of the department, right? So next one, what is the next thing? Internal audit reports relating to the internal control weaknesses. I already told you now there are 2 types of evaluations and testing of internal control system takes place in a company. One is the internal auditor who does the analysis. of the weaknesses of internal control system and drafts a report and send it to audit committee. And the same letter of weaknesses is also going to be drafted by whom? Statutory auditor. Now internal auditor is doing the review of the internal control system of the company on the directions of the management, is doing it for the management, whereas the statutory auditor is not doing it for the management, he is doing it for the users of financial statement. Objective is different. Internal auditor is a puppet of management, he will do the review of the internal control system for the management purpose, but the statutory auditor will do the same review for the whose purpose? For the users of financial statement. So one letter of weaknesses which is issued by the statutory auditor, and one letter of weaknesses which is issued by the internal auditor. Right. Next one, the appointment, removal and the terms of remuneration of the chief internal auditor subject to the review by the audit committee. Who is going to head the internal audit department? That person who is going to head the internal audit department, that person is known as chief internal auditor. His qualifications, his removal, his appointment and terms of remuneration, all of that will also be reviewed by which committee? Audit committee. What should be his remuneration? What should be the criteria of his removal? How he has to be appointed? If he is to be retained or to be removed, the chief internal auditor, that also will be decided by whom? Audit committee. So out of 6 mandatory reviews, I already told you the 5 mandatory reviews. So what are the reviews to be mandatorily made by the audit committee as per the LODA regulation? Point number 1, sir, management discussion and analysis report. Point number 2, sir, statement of significant related party transactions. So point number 3, sir, the letter of weaknesses which is issued by the which auditor? Statutory auditor. 4, sir, internal auditors report on internal control system weaknesses issued. And the 5th one, sir, the terms of remuneration, the appointment and removal of the chief internal auditor. What is the 6th matter? What is the 6th matter the audit committee mandatorily has to review? That is called quarterly statement of deviations, including a report of monitoring agency if applicable. Annual statements of the funds utilized for the purposes other than those stated in other offer documents or prospectus of notice. Now listen. What happens? Suppose there is one company called Reliance India Limited. Try to understand this example. Reliance India Limited did what? Sir, Reliance India Limited, say for example, has raised rupees 10,000 crores from the market via public issue. Correct, everyone? So Reliance India Limited raised what? 10,000 crore rupees via which issue? Public issue. Now, what was written in the prospectus? In the prospectus, it was written that they are going to use this money. They are going to use this money in opening the 10 new factories. In opening how many factories? So 10 new factories they want to open. Are you getting a point or not? But later on, the statutory auditor, when he came to know that, the internal auditor or the statutory auditor came to know that, or the audit committee is having one monitoring agency in the entity. In the listed company, there will be one agency called monitoring agency. Right or not? That monitoring agency is directly reportable to whom? Directly reportable to audit committee. Now this monitoring agency is keeping an eye over the board of directors, over the utilization of the funds. How much money Reliance India Limited realized? 10,000 crore rupees they raised. Are they utilizing it for the purpose for which they have raised, or they are utilizing for other than purpose? If they are utilizing that money for the other than purpose for which they have raised, then don't you think it is a deviation from their objective or not? Yes, the monitoring agency will report that deviation statement to the audit committee, and audit committee will review the annual statement of funds utilized for the purposes other than those stated in the offer document. If you have utilized even a single rupee other than the purpose for which it was raised, then it is mandatorily to be reviewed by which committee? Audit committee, on the basis of the report issued by the which agency? Monitoring agency. So basically the idea is that you are doing a fraud with the public if you are not utilizing the money of the public for the purpose for which it was raised. So that is what do you mean by the 6 mandatory reviews to be done by the audit committee. Very popular question. Point number 1, management discussion and analysis report. The point number 2, what is the point number 2? Tell me quickly. Point number two, letter of weaknesses of the internal control system issued by the statutory auditor, statement of significant related party transaction, internal audit report on the weaknesses of the internal control system. And point number five is relating to what? The remuneration, the terms of appointment and the removal and appointment of the chief internal auditor, and the monetary and the statement issued by the monitoring agency on the deviations of the funds utilization for the purpose other than what? For which it was raised. So these are the 6 mandatory reviews to be done by the which committee? Audit committee. Clear everyone? So far in the audit committee, what we have discussed, everything relating to audit committee, what is applicable, what is not applicable, what Companies Act is telling, what Companies Act is not telling. That is what we have understood so far. Am I correct or not? Now what we are going to understand? Now we are going to understand very, 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 very important thing. What is the statutory auditor's role in the LODR regulations in relation to audit committee? Now we will learn something which is from our point of view. If you tomorrow will become an auditor of a listed entity and you are watching the audit committee, what procedures you have to follow as per the LODR regulations when you are doing the audit of a listed entity. So listen to this thing. What is the topic name? Audit procedures for audit committee related checks. Let me give you one idea. Let me give you one idea. Let me give you one idea. Now, listen. LODR regulation says that LODR regulation says that the statutory auditor of a listed entity and the audit committee. Now, audit committee is also a kind of independent directors committee or not? Yes, sir. So basically, can I say that it is a neutral agency? Or can I say that it itself is a monitoring agency who is keeping an eye of the company so that the company should not do anything, any bad kind of activity? Am I correct? Any wrong activities? Yes. So you can say that statutory auditor obviously is not going to help the audit committee in performing its functions. But yes, wherever the need arises, if the audit committee is looking for any kind of help in relation to smooth functioning of its role. Now, suppose I am the audit committee, you are a statutory auditor. I am the audit committee, I am doing my roles, duties, responsibilities, everything. But there are some areas where I am unable to understand because I am an audit committee. I am not auditor. I am an audit committee. Little bit of the role of the statutory auditor is also going to be played by which? Audit committee. But I can't think like a chartered accountant. I can't think like an auditor. So there will be some areas where I will be asking you some little bit of help. Who is asking? Audit committee is asking a little bit of, you can say that a friendly kind of help, friendly kind of approach expected from a statutory auditor. So don't take me wrong. Statutory auditor is not doing something which the audit committee is supposed to do. Statutory auditor is going to help the audit committee in some needy situations where the audit committee needs to fight a particular situation. That is what the major role. That is what the major role of the statutory auditor in case of LODR regulation. So let us understand what the auditor's role when it comes to the audit committee related checks. So point number one. The auditor should ascertain from the minutes book of the audit committee and the other sources like agenda papers, etc., whether the audit committee has reviewed the above information or not. So first of all, whether the 6 mandatory reviews to be done by the audit committee or not. Yes, sir, there are 6 mandatory reviews to be done by the audit committee. Just now we have finished. So auditor has to check from the minutes of the audit committee meetings whether they have done those 6 mandatory reviews or not. The auditor is checking. Whose role? Audit committee's role. Then, where certain deficiencies or adverse findings are noted by the audit committee, where the certain deficiencies or adverse findings are noted by the audit committee, the auditor will be required to see that these have been suitably dealt with by the management in the report on corporate governance. Now, suppose when the audit committee was doing the mandatory reviews, they found some deficiencies, like I told you, weaknesses of internal control system, or some problems relating to related party transactions, some problem relating to intercorporate loans. So at that point of time, what is going to happen? At that point of time, it is the auditor's responsibility to see that whether audit committee, after finding some adverse findings and deficiencies, did they report it to the management, and whether the management has taken the remedial actions to deal with those problems or not. He has to check for that. He has to check the report on corporate governance, which is going to be prepared by whom? Management. Are you getting the point or not? So again repeating, our audit committee has reviewed the above mentioned information where the certain deficiencies or adverse findings are noted by the audit committee. The auditor will be required to see that these have been suitably dealt with the management by the management in the report on corporate governance. Right or not? Same. Next point. What is the role of auditor in the audit committee and certification of compliance of conditions of corporate governance? Now we are actually going to understand what is basically the role of the statutory auditor when it comes to the LODR regulations relating to audit committee. Now, similarly, Section 177 of the Companies Act provides the auditor of the company and the key manager person the right to be heard in the meeting of the audit committee when it considers the auditor's report, but they shall not have the right to vote. Are you getting the point? It means the statutory auditor can attend the audit committee meeting. Statutory auditor can attend the audit committee meetings, but it does not have the right to vote. The auditor must ensure that he communicates frequently and openly with the audit committee on key accounting and auditing issues that in the auditor's judgment give rise to the greater risk of material misstatements of the financial statements. The auditor has to keep in mind that his role is not to derive corporate governance directly. That is what I was telling you in the beginning of this starting of this topic. Now this is a statutory auditor. This is an audit committee. Actually, देखा जाए तो they both are indirect friends. They both are indirect friends. Some work of the statutory auditor is already being carried out by which committee? Sir, audit committee is doing that. So it is a responsibility of the statutory auditor कि on some occasions, if the audit committee feels that they are in need of help, some help relating to accounting framework or some help relating to auditing framework, so it is the statutory auditor's role to guide the audit committee for the smooth functioning. Guide, but it doesn't mean that he will get involved in the audit committee in doing or getting connected with the corporate governance compliances directly. Remember one thing, you have to maintain some relationship. Don't get involved. If you will get involved in the audit committee, if you will take it too much directly or too much seriously, then in that case no point of calling you as a statutory auditor. So statutory auditor is just going to help the audit committee in some issues if the audit committee is finding some issues in the future relating to accounting framework or relating to auditing framework. Right? So again, reading you for your purpose, the auditor must ensure that he communicates frequently and openly with the audit committee on key accounting and auditing issues which in the auditor's judgment give rise to the greater risk of what? Material misstatement of the financial statement. If the statutory auditor thinks that there are some areas which are posing the risk of ROMM, risk of material misstatement on the financial statement, it is his responsibility to discuss those issues with whom? Audit committee in a friendly nature, but they have made it very clear the auditor has to keep in mind that his role is not to derive the corporate governance directly. Clear everyone? Yes sir, we are clear. Now what is amendment? Statutory auditor of a listed company shall undertake limited review. Very important amendment. Limited review of all the entities or companies whose accounts are consolidated with the listed company as per IND-AS in accordance with the guidelines issued by the SEBI. Now, in the previous chapter, if you remember, we have done the audit of consolidated financial statements. There are two types of companies. Those companies which follow IND-AS and those companies which follow accounting standards. Now, those companies which are following the IND-AS for the consolidation purpose, now listen to this thing. The entities, if you are an auditor of a listed company, so say for example, Mr. A is the statutory auditor of Reliance India Limited. In the Reliance India Limited, subsidiary 1, associate 1 and joint venture 1 are getting consolidated. Is Reliance India Limited a listed entity? Yes, it means auditor is covered under LODR regulations. Yes sir, auditor is covered. Now, statutory auditor of a listed entity definitely going to take care of everything. Definitely going to take care of everything which is taking place in what? Reliance India Limited LODR also. It is something, the LODR of the Reliance India Limited, it is something which the statutory auditor of the Reliance India Limited has to take care of. But he also have to do, plus additionally, limited review of its components which are there for consolidation purpose, which are there for which purpose? Consolidation purpose. Those subsidiaries, those associates, those joint ventures which are getting consolidated with the Reliance India Limited as per IND AS consolidation requirements, the statutory auditor of Reliance India Limited also has to do some limited review of the financial statements of those components as well. That is the small minor responsibility extra which has been put up on the shoulders of whom? Auditor. Now, so you can see that what is amendment? The statutory auditor of a Reliance India Limited, our listed company was Reliance India Limited, shall undertake the limited review of all the entities or companies whose accounts are consolidated with this listed entity as per the INDS in accordance with guidelines by SEBI. I hope every one of you is crystal clear. Every one of you is crystal clear. Yes, sir. We are crystal clear. Clear, everyone? Yes. So what is the auditor's responsibility? Auditor's responsibility in certifying the compliance with the requirements of the corporate governance relating to verification and certification of actual implementation of requirements of corporate governance as stipulated in LODR regulation. Such verification and certification is neither an audit nor an expression of opinion on the financial statements of the company. So remember one thing, when the auditor is doing his duty as per the LODR regulations and when he is giving his report, so when the auditor is issuing a report on corporate governance, report on which governance? Corporate governance. So the LODR is very much clarifying that it is neither an audit nor any kind of certification nor any kind of opinion. Are you getting the point? ना तो ये ऑडिट है, ना तो ये सर्टिफिकेशन है, ना तो ये ओपिनियन है. तो when the auditor is giving a report, when the auditor is giving a report on the compliance of corporate governance by the listed entity, it is neither an audit nor a certificate or nor an expression of opinion. Clear, everyone? So again read, such verification and certification is neither an audit nor an expression of opinion on the financial statements of the company. So when you are doing the review over the corporate governance, it is neither an audit nor a opinion. Clear, everyone? So don't mistake it ki yes, it is a part of your audit. No, it is just a part of your review of corporate governance on the listed entity. So neither it is an audit nor it is a other thing. Now, next one. As in the case of other professional assignments, in certifying the compliance with the requirements of corporate governance, auditor should comply with the code of ethics. The auditor should conduct verification as stipulated in the LODR regulation in accordance with the guidance on certification issued by the ICAI. Auditor should also consider obtaining MRL in accordance with 580. In accordance with 580. So let me give you an idea now what we have done so far. So let's write and prepare the notes what we always do. So if you remember, up to the role of audit committee, we have already prepared the notes. So let me give you one overall idea of what we are doing next, right? Now listen to this thing carefully. Yes. Now listen to this. First of all, mandatory reviews by audit committee. So when this kind of question you're going to see in the examination, what is the thing coming to your mind? So when I'm saying that what are the mandatory reviews to be done by the audit committee, there are total 6 mandatory reviews. How many? Total 6 mandatory reviews to be done by the audit committee. So what are the 6 mandatory reviews? Management discussion and analysis report. First one is management discussion and analysis report. Then statement of significant related party transaction. Point number 2. Then It was the letter of weaknesses on ICS issued by whom? By the statutory auditor. It has to review that also. Then internal audit reports on the same. Internal auditors report on the same and statutory auditors report on the same. Two things the audit committee has to review. Then the appointment, removal, and terms of appointment and remuneration of a CFO. That also is to be reviewed by the audit committee mandatorily. And statement of deviation or differences on utilization of funds. Clear everyone? On utilization of funds. So these are the 6 mandatory reviews to be done by the which company, to be done by the which committee? Audit committee. Clear everyone? So are we done with the 6 mandatory reviews? Yes, sir. So there were total how many? Yes, there were total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Total 6 mandatory reviews we have understood. Now, what is the audit procedures? What is the auditor's role? All those things we have to understand. So, auditor's role in relation to audit committee checks. What are the auditor's role in relation to audit committee checks? So, point number one, the auditor has to check if whether audit committee has mandatorily done its review duty or not. Is it the duty of the, when it is mandatory for the audit committee, is it a duty or not? Yes, sir, it is a duty. The auditor has to check whether the audit committee has mandatorily done its review duty of the first 6 points or not. This we am talking about. This, whether it has done the review of all the 6 points mandatorily or not. Yes. Point number two. Sir, what is the point number two? Then the auditor shall see that then the auditor shall see that any deficiencies or adverse adverse findings of audit committee were properly taken care of by management or not. Sir, what do you mean by that? So while doing his duties, if the audit committee has reported any kind of deficiencies or adverse findings to the management, whether the management has taken care of that properly or not, that also auditor has to check. Then third point, sometimes sometimes auditor shall sometimes auditor shall openly and frequently communicate with the audit committee in relation to accounting or auditing related issues of company. But I already told you, he shall not be directly involved in that. He shall not be directly involved in that. So you can say that you can call it as a friendly approach. You can call it as a which approach? Friendly approach. Between whom and whom? Between the auditor and the audit committee. But it doesn't mean that you will start sitting with the audit committee to take care of each and everything what the audit committee is supposed to do. Are you getting them? Then there is no point of having an audit committee in the entity, right? Okay. Point number four. Now, what is the point number four? Now listen. Point number four. Now, sir, what is the point number four? Next point. when the auditor is a statutory auditor of a listed entity. Very important point and amendment 2. When an auditor is a statutory auditor of a which entity? Listed entity. He has a duty to do overall review or limited review. To do limited review of such companies and components whose accounts are getting consolidated with such a listed entity as per IND-AS. Correct, everyone? So, as per IND-AS, if you are an auditor of one listed company, and in that listed company, some of the components and some of the company's accounts are getting consolidated as per the requirement of IND-AS requirements, then in that case, the auditor has to do the limited review of those companies and components also. This is nothing but called an amendment. And most important point what we have understood, point number 5, most important point what we have understood is certification on corporate governance by a statutory auditor. Certification of corporate governance by a statutory auditor. Sir, why we are writing all this? I know that it will be very difficult for you to retain the topics when you will read the study material or when you will read my material, but let me make it very clear. If you will read these right side written all the notes given in front of you, it will be very easy for you. So zap, all the points will go inside you, and that's why I'm writing everything on short. So certification of corporate governance by a statutory auditor is neither an audit report, neither an audit nor an expression of opinion. It is just a review. Right, everyone? Remember one thing, na to ye audit hai or nor it is a expression of opinion. So now we can say that everything relating to audit committee we have conquered. So now each and every point relating to the audit committee you can do. Each and every point relating to the audit committee you can do. Now the major things are going to start. So we are done with the legal framework, right? We are done already with the legal framework. Now we are done with the audit committee. Now the second biggest topic which we are going to start is called board of directors topic. What is the name of the topic? It is known as board of directors topic, right? Board of directors topic, sorry. Now here also you will get so many kinds of differences between the board of directors rules and regulations as per LODR and board of directors rules and regulations as per Companies Act. So I'll do one thing, wherever possible I will try my level best to write it on the this material only, because we have a lot of space on the left side. So instead of writing on the right side, especially only for this topic, I would like to write it on the there itself only, so that you can understand there itself and we can compare it as and when it is required. So the next regulations of the LODR which we have to talk about is relating to board of directors. Board of director regulations. Now see, what are the regulations of the board of directors when it comes to LODR, and what are the regulations of the board of directors when it comes to Companies Act 2013. Now, what regulations relating to board of directors as per the listing obligation and disclosure requirement, that is for the listed companies, and what regulations are generally relating to board of directors which are defined under which act? Companies Act. Now listen to this very carefully. Now, as per the Companies Act, we all know that the board of directors should be minimum 3, maximum 15. Sir, why minimum 3? Minimum 2 also can be there or not? That can be there for which companies? For the private companies. Are we talking about the private companies? No. We are talking about which companies? Listed companies. And who can be the listed companies? Public companies. So as per the public company, what is the minimum requirement? So as per the Companies Act, the minimum board of directors should be there on the board should be 3 and maximum should be 15. Right or not? But as per the Companies Act, there is one more provision. If you want to go more than 15, if you want to go for more than 15 board of directors, you can do it by passing a special resolution. You can do it by passing a which resolution? Special resolution. All that is written under which act? Companies Act. So how many minimum directors? 3, sir. So how many maximum directors? Sir, 15, sir. Now see, if more than 15 directors to be appointed, obtain permission by passing a which resolution? Special resolution. Sir, ये कहाँ पे लिखा है? Section number 149 is talking about that. The where we will see it, you will see it in the very first topic when you will do the directors topic in your CA final law. Correct, everyone? So section number 149. Yes, sir. Section number 149. So minimum 3, maximum 15, more than 15, then in that case special resolution is required. Where it is written? Companies Act is written, but LODR is saying it different. Now here comes the amendments topics. Now here comes the major amendments. Now so many amendments are there in the audit committee and corporate governance. So many amendments are there. Now, remember, as per LODR regulations, if you are a top 1000 listed companies, if you are among the top 1000 listed companies, or if you are among now today, I will tell you what has happened. 2 times amendments came. There are some amendments which are relating to 1st April 2019 onwards. 1st April 2019 onwards, and there are some amendments which are relating to 1st April 2020 onwards. As per the 1st April 2019 onwards amendment of LODR, if you are among the top 1000 listed companies, you should have minimum 6 directors. Sir, minimum 3, just now you have said, na? Sir, minimum 3 which I have said is as per the Companies Act. As per which act? Companies Act. Are we doing Companies Act? No, we are doing LODR regulations. So, for 1/4/2019 amendments onwards, if you are among the top 1000 listed entities, you should have the minimum. How many directors? 6 directors. Sorry, minimum 7 directors. Are you getting the point? Now, as from 1/4/2020 onwards, if you are among the top 2000 listed entities, now not 1000 listed entities, if you are among the top 2000 listed entities, then you should have minimum 6 directors. Minimum how many directors? 6 directors. Now see, the board of directors of the top 1000 listed entities with effect from 1st April 2019 and the top 2000 listed entities with effect on the 1st April 2020 shall comprise of not less than 6 directors. The top 1000 directors and 2000 top 1000 entities and 2000 listed entities shall be determined on the basis of their market capitalization by the end of the immediately previous financial year. Clear, everyone? So what is the difference we found, sir? First difference, sir, board size. So what is the board size? As per the Companies Act, the board size should be minimum 3 directors, maximum 15 directors, more than 15 directors by passing a special resolution. Right or not? Now, as per LODR, if you are among the top 1000 as on 1/1/4/2019, and if you are among the top 2000 listed companies as on 1/4/2020 onwards, in your company minimum 6 board of directors are required. No, nothing has been talked about the maximum, only minimum 6. And how you are among the top 1000 or how you are among the top 2000, that will be determined on the basis of your market capitalization. So very simple point. The point number 1 is as per Companies Act. As per Companies Act. Right? So as per the SEBI, as per what? SEBI LODR. Clear? Clear, everyone? I hope now you all understood what I'm trying to tell. This is what you have to understand. So this is the difference number 1. of the board of director composition as per Companies Act and board of directors composition as per SEBI LODR regulation. Clear? Okay, sir. Let's move ahead. Next point. Composition of board of directors. Composition of what? Board of directors. So again, what the Companies Act is saying. Companies Act has nothing talked about. Companies Act talked about nothing when it comes to non-executive directors. But at least one women director required. As per the Companies Act, in your board of directors, how many executive directors should be there and how many non-executive directors should be there? First of all, so we have to understand, sir, what do you mean by executive director and what do you mean by non-executive director? Listen to this. Executive director is a director which is in full employment with the company as well as he is in directorship with the company. So he's an employee of the company full time and he's also in the directorship with the company full time. But sir, what do you mean by non-executive director? Non-executive director is a director who is not having any kind of employment with the company. He's only working as a director. So I'm not saying 100%, kind of you can call them as independent director who will come only for the director's role, no employee role. That is called non-executive director. Clear, everyone? So Companies Act says nothing about the non-executive directors in your board of directors composition. But yes, it says that at least one women director should be there. So that is what, as per what, composition of the directors as per what, as per the Companies Act, right? So no specific provision relating to non-executive director, but at least one women director. But what does the LODR regulation says that? LODR regulation says that in your board at least greater than equals to 50%, minimum 50% should be the which directors? Non-executive directors. Minimum 50% should be which directors? Non-executive directors, and at least one should be the women director. Are you getting the point? So there is nothing talked about the non-executive directors when it comes to the Companies Act. But yes, as per the LODR, minimum 50% of the directors of the company should be non-executive directors plus minimum at least one women director. That is what is being given. Correct or not? Now, top 500 listed companies as per 1/4/2019 and top 1000 listed companies as by 1/4/2020 to have at least one independent women director. Not a women director, one independent women director, and no listed entity shall appoint a person or continue the directorship of any person as a non-executive director who has attained the age of 75 years unless a special resolution is passed to that effect in case the explanatory statement annexed to the notice of such thing. Are you getting the point? Now let me give you one idea. Now let us write what this particular composition of directors topic is saying. Now composition of directors topic is saying that ki as per bhaiya, as per Companies Act, nothing talked about which director? Non-executive director. But yes, one women director is required. One women director is required. Clear? But as per LODR regulations, as per which regulations? As per LODR regulations, at least 50% should be non-executive directors in your board composition, plus one women director should also be there, or among them one women director should also be there. Correct? But if you are a top 500 listed entities, in the above point it was top 1000 and top 2000, but now if you are top 500 listed companies or if you are a top 1000 listed companies as on 1/4/2019 and as on 1/4/2020, in such cases that women director which we had talked about earlier, she should also be a independent women director. Sir, what do you mean by independent women director? For that you need to understand section number 149 subsection 6, which is the very first topic when you will enter into CA final law. Who is independent director? So they need independent women director. That is the one thing has been told. Next most important thing, the non-executive director. The non-executive director's maximum age limit of a non-executive director is 75 years. How many years? 75 years. After 75 years, if you still want to retain this non-executive directors of more than 75 years, then again you need to pass a which resolution? Special resolution. Take the shareholders permission by passing a special resolution. You can have a non-executive director of more than 75 years also in the company. I hope I made it very clear. So in the point number 1, what we understood, as per the Companies Act, the minimum 3 directors, maximum 15, more than 15, special resolution. Then maximum number of directors, maximum or minimum number of directors as per LODR, if you are a top 1000 listed entities, or if you are among the top 2000 listed entities, in any case you should have minimum 6 independent, minimum 6 directors. Are you getting the point or not? Clear? Yes, sir. Clear. Now, what should be the composition of non-executive directors as per Companies Act? Nothing has been talked about. It is silent. But yes, one women director point is there in the Companies Act also. The same point of women director is there in the LODR also. But LODR also says that minimum 50% of the composition of the board of directors should be non-executive directors. And what is the maximum age of a non-executive directors? 75 years. So if you want to retain for a more than 75 years or want to reappoint the person of after attaining the age of 75 years, pass which resolution? Special resolution. But if you are a top 500 listed entities as on 1/4/2019, and if you are among top 1000 listed entities as on 1/4/2020, then that women director should be a independent women director. It should be a which director? Independent women director. Clear everyone? Clear everyone? Yes sir, clear. So make sure that you are understanding this topic very carefully. Okay, तो best thing is that as and when I'm writing the notes, you also write it down along with me. Take a piece of paper and a pen with you and write whatever I'm writing like this. Whatever I'm writing like this. Clear? So that is as per the Companies Act and this is as per the LODR. I told you only for this topic. It's a huge topic actually. That's why only for this topic I'll be writing not on the right side. I'll be writing on this side. Clear everyone? Yes sir. Clear. Now, next thing. Next point. So what is the next point now? Yes, composition of independent directors now. Composition of independent directors now. अब सुनना ध्यान से. अब सुनना very important point. अब Companies Act. See, I told you non-executive director is not an independent director. He is like an independent director. Independent director definition is separately. It's a very huge definition. So non-executive directors and independent director is the main point where the student get confused. So in the first point, in the earlier point, just now we discussed about the non-executive directors. But now we are going to discuss about the independent directors. Now as per Companies Act says that in the board composition, at least 1/3 should be which directors? Independent director. So sir, bhaiya, total board of directors, say for example 15. Out of 15, 1/3 is what? 5 should be which director? Independent director. 5 should be which director, sir? Independent director. Clear? Yes, but that is not written in the LODR. LODR says what? LODR says that, now see, we will read it later on, but let me tell you, if there is any skipping of the point, then we'll read it on that. Now, if the non-executive director is the chairman of the board, if a non-executive director is the chairman of the board, then we need only 1/3 independent director in the total board of directors. If a non-executive director is the chairman of the board, is the chairperson of the board, then the 1/3 of the total strength should be which directors? Independent director. But if executive director is the chairman of the board, then we need minimum 1/2 of the board of directors should be which director? Independent director. So let's take an example. Sir, Mr. A is the chairperson of the Reliance India Limited's board. Right or not? Mr. A is a non-executive director. There are total 15 directors. So 1/3 of 15 means what? 5. Now Mr. A is the executive director. He is the chairperson. Now we need 1/3 or 1/2. Half. So what is a half of 15? 7.5. 7.5 will be taken as 8. So 8 should be which directors? Independent director. Now, if you are a non-executive director and you are a chairperson of the board, but you are related to whom? Promoter or promoters group. Now, this is the third point. If you are related to promoter or which group? Promoters group. You are connected with the promoter or promoters group. Then also we need half of board of directors to be which directors? Independent directors. It means how many independent directors are going to be there in your listed company. That depends upon who is chairing the board of directors of that listed company. If the board of director is a non-executive director, then one third. If the board of director is a non-executive director, but somehow it is connected to promoter or promoters do, then half. If the chairman of the board of director is a executive director, then definitely it is half. So that is what is written in the this particular topic. Now see, what is the topic saying? If the chairperson is NED, non-executive director, then at least one third should be ID, independent director. If the chairperson is NED but is a promoter or related to promoter holding position of the board or one or more below level, then at least half to be. I told you now, if the chairperson is connected with the promoter or the promoters group, then half should be which directors? Independent director. Clear? And where the listed company has outstanding special rights equity shares, superior right equity shares, at least half of the board shall be comprised of which directors? Independent director. That is an amendment. Are you getting the point? So let us write the one point. So in case, so that is an additional amendment. Now sir, what is amendment? In case a listed entity is having outstanding superior rights equity shares, then it doesn't make any difference who is chairing your board of directors. Then directly they have written half shall be independent directors. Again, this is an amendment. Clear, everyone? I hope everyone is clear. Yes, sir, everyone is clear. So we are done with how many should be there in the board of directors. We are done with how many should be non-executive directors in case of Companies Act and in case of what? LODA regulations. Am I correct or not? And how many should be women director? But if you're a top 500 or a top 1000 listed, then in that case, there should not be a normal women director. There should be a independent women director, and NED's maximum age is 75 years, sir. If we want to retain the NED for more than 75 years, then in that case it will be this thing called special resolution. Correct, everyone? Next one. How many independent directors required? That depends upon who is chairing the board. If the chairman of the board of director is executive director, then half. Non-executive director, then one third. But if the non-executive director is relating to the promoter, the promoter's relatives, then half. And if you're a company with the outstanding equity superior right shares, then also half. So that brings an end to the discussion on this point also. Right or not? It brings an end to the discussion on this point also. Right? Now, chairperson. What is the next topic relating to chairperson? Now listen to this thing. What does the Companies Act say? Companies Act to directly says that ki refer section number 100, 203. Companies Act says that refer section number 203. Whatever is written in the 203, that is applicable to the chairperson. But are we doing Companies Act? No, we are doing which regulations? LODR regulations. So LODR regulation says what? With effect from 1st April 2020. The top 500 listed entities shall ensure that the chairperson of the board of directors of the listed shall be an non-executive director and not to be related to the managing director of CEO or as per the definition of the term relative defined upon the Companies Act. Right or not, provided that this sub-regulation shall not applicable to listed entities which do not have identifiable promoters as per the shareholding pattern with the stock exchanging. Explanation: the 500 listed company shall be determined on the basis of their this thing. Now see, they are saying that as per the Companies Act, who can be chairman? As per the Companies Act, who can be the chairperson of the board of directors of a non-listed company as per Companies Act? Then in that case, they are saying refer section, what do you say, section number 203. But who can be the chairperson? Who can be the chairperson? As per Companies Act, it is section number 203. What is the section number? 203. But as per LODR regulations, then it says that chairperson should be a non-executive director plus should not be connected or relative of MD and CFO the company. Right or not? That is what the provision. Now see, with effect from 1st April 2020, matlab abhi recently, with effect from 1st April 2020, the chairperson of the board of directors of the listed company shall be a non-executive director and not be related to the managing director or the chief executive officer, right or not? So it should not be related to the managing director or the chief executive officer. So what do you mean by connected or relative? That is a relative definition is same, which is defined under section 2 subsection 77 of Companies Act. Clear everyone? So first we understood what should be the composition of the board, how many board of directors. Then we understood what should be the composition of the board, how many NEDs are required and how many women directors are required. All those things we have talked about. Then we have talked about this thing, if the NED chairperson, if the non-NED is a chairperson, then what should be the criteria relating to independent directors. And now we understood who should be the chairperson of a listed entity. So from the 1st April 2020, what we have understood is that listed entities chairperson should be non-executive director only, plus he should not be a relative of any MD or the CEO of the company. I hope all of this we are done with. Yes sir, we are done with. Now board of directors, it is also being said that the board meetings shall be held at least 4 times in a year, that the maximum gap between the two meetings shall not exceed 120 days. That we already know, like an audit committee meetings. Now in this point they are saying that how many board meetings we need. So we need 4 calendar year, 4 meetings in a which year? Calendar year. We need a minimum 4 board meetings in a calendar year, and maximum gap between the two meetings, maximum gap between the two meetings shall not be more than, it shall not be more than what? It shall not be more than 120 days. That we already know. But yes, there are so many new changes have come that we'll understand as and when we are moving ahead. So up to this point, there's no problem. So we understood the composition of board of director, everything relating to board of director. So let's talk about the composition of board of director as per the LODR again. Sir, minimum how many directors? Sir, minimum 6 directors. Sir, why minimum 6 directors? Where it is as per the 1000 listed companies of 1/4/2019 and if you are among the 2000 listed entities from 1/4/2020, then minimum 6 directors should be there in your entity. Next point. Sir, out of the total director, what should be the composition of the non-executive directors? Nothing is being talked about in Companies Act, but in the LODR it says that at least 50% of the directors, total board of directors, should be what? Non-executive directors. And one women director is also there. Are you getting the point? But for the top 500 listed entities and for the top, what do you say, 1000 listed entities from 1/4/2019 and 1/4/2020, then that women director should be an independent women director. It should be an independent women director. In the third point, we understood, sir, out of the non-executive directors in the board of directors, how many should be independent director? The Companies Act directly said that 1/3 should be the independent directors. But what is the LODR saying? LODR saying that it depends upon the who is chairperson of that board. If the chairperson of the board is non-executive director and not connected with the promoter, then 1/3 would be fine. But if the chairperson of the board of directors is non-executive director and connected with the promoters and promoters group, then half. And if the chairperson is a non-executive director, then definitely half. But if you are a listed entity with the outstanding equity shares of superior rights, then definitely minimum half should be your independent director. That is an amendment. Then now we understood कि yes sir, अच्छा non-executive director का maximum age क्या है? 75 years. Sir, can we appoint a non-executive director for more than 75 years? Yes, there is a provision. Pass a which resolution? Sir, pass a special resolution. Clear everyone? Yes sir. How many board meetings? How many board meetings? Sir, 4 board meetings in a calendar year. And the gap between the 2 board meetings shall not be more than 120 days. I hope everything is crystal clear so far. Very easy, sir. Very easy. Now, very important. Very important topic. What is the important topic? They're saying that if you are following the LODR regulations as a listed entity, your first board meeting, after incorporation should be within 30 days of incorporation. The first board meeting after incorporation, like you are a newly incorporated company, then the first board meeting should be done within 30 days of the incorporation plus 4 board meetings in a calendar year. That is what is written. Clear? Now see. Every company shall hold the first meeting of the board of directors within 30 days from the date of incorporation, and thereafter minimum number of 4 board meetings of the board in each year, such a manner that not more than 120 days of the gap between the two meetings. That we already know, the gap between the two shall not be more than 120 days. So it's a very simple thing. Basically in this topic they are talking about the newly incorporated company. Then within the 30 days of your incorporation, the first board meeting should be held. And you have to make sure that in every another calendar year, minimum 4 board meetings are taking place, and the gap between the two meetings shall not be more than 120 days. Provided that central government may by notification provides for the subsection shall not apply in relation to any class or description of the company shall apply subject to such exceptions, modification. So if the central government wants, they can remove this provision. If the central government wants, right or not? Now, very important topic. Now, what is the next topic? Quorum of the board meeting. Now see, if we talk about the quorum, first of all, tell me, what do you mean by quorum? The minimum number of members to be required to be present in a meeting to call it as a valid meeting. So if it is a Companies Act quorum, try to understand, if it is a Companies Act quorum, then it is written that 2 or 1/3, whichever is higher, if it is Companies Act. But if it is LODR quorum, it is written that 3 or 1/3, whichever is higher. That is what the difference between Companies Act quorum requirement of the board meetings and LODR quorum requirements of the board meeting. Very easy point, sir. So 1/3 or the 2, whichever is higher. Now what is here? The quorum for the every meeting of the board of directors of the top 1000 listed companies with effect from 1st April, and the board of directors of the top 2000 listed entities with effect from 1st April 2020 shall be 1/3 of its total strength or 3 directors, whichever is higher, including least one independent director. Right or not? So, as per the Companies Act, 2 or 1/3, whichever is higher. As per the LODR, 3 or 1/3, whichever is higher. But here, at least one must be ID. What is ID, everyone? Independent director. So we are done with the meaning of board of directors, composition of board of directors, chairperson of the board of directors, and how many independent directors are required in the board of directors. And we also talked about how many number of board meetings if you are a newly incorporated within 30 days of incorporation first meeting, and for maintaining the rules of 4 board meetings in a calendar year with a gap of maximum 120 days between the two board meetings. But what should be the quorum in your board meetings? As per Companies Act, it should be 2 or 1/3, whichever is higher. But as per the LODR regulation, it is 3 or 1/3, whichever is higher, with a minimum presence of one independent director. Clear, everyone? Yes. But remember one thing: this quorum provision is only applicable to whom? To the top 1000 listed companies as on 1/4/2019, and to the top 2000 listed entities as on 1/4/2020. Clear, everyone? Yes, sir. We are clear. I hope so far you are able to understand. Now see, so many provisions are there, but I'm telling you, if you make a small notes of audit committee, like what I'm making on the left side, I'm making you write all these notes on the left side, then it will be very easy. Just make some small suitable charts and you are ready for that. Now, quorum provisions are also done, sir. What is the next one? Maximum number of directorships, including alternate directorships. Now, as per Companies Act, a one director can hold maximum 20 directorships. As per the Companies Act, section number 165, a one director can hold maximum 20 directorships in a 20 different companies. But that is as per the Companies Act. Obviously, we have to focus on Companies Act or LODR. Sir, LODR. Now, LODR says that person shall not be a director in more than 8 listed entities with effect from 1/4/2019, and 8 has been reduced to 7. 8 has been reduced to now 7. From when? From 1/4/2020. So from 1/4/2019, the rule was that a single director should not be a director in more than 8 listed companies. Whereas from 1/4/2020, the rule has been changed. Now you can become a director in not 8. Now you can become a director in maximum 7. So see, a person shall not be a director in more than 8 listed entities with effect from 1st April 2019, and in not more than 7 listed entities with effect from 1st April 2020, subject to the condition that a person shall not serve as an independent director in more than 7 listed entities, but any person who is serving as a whole-time director or managing director in any listed entity shall serve as an independent director in not more than 3 listed entities. Little bit complicated, but I'll make it very clear. Now see, first of all, we all know what is the rule. Sir, as on 1/4/2019, I'm talking about LODR only. Companies Act you already know, maximum 20 directorships, then after that leave. LODR का concentrate करेंगे. As on 1/4/2019, maximum directorship 7 companies. Sorry, 8 companies. 8 companies. 8 which companies? Listed companies. Now, as on 1/4/2020, it is changed. Now, maximum directorship in listed entities, how much? Maximum 7 listed companies. So one person can become the maximum in the maximum 7 listed companies. He can become as a director. Now listen to this. There is one another condition also. So what is the another condition? Condition is relating to independent director. Now see, if you are only working as a director, and if you are working as an MD or CEO, or you can say that if you are working as an MD or full-time director in that company, if you are working as a director in one company, now what they are saying, subject to the condition that person shall not serve as an independent director in not in more than 7 listed entities, but any person who is serving as a whole-time director or managing director in any listed company shall serve as an independent director in not more than 3 entities. Now the point is, sir, what do you mean by this? It's a very simple point. We'll make it very easy for you. Now see, there is one company, listed company, where you are an MD or whole-time director, right or not? And in the other companies, there are 7 other companies who wants to make you as a what do you say, the director in the company. But what kind of role? There are total 5 companies which wants you to appoint as a which director? Independent director. So in one company you are already working as a MD and whole-time director, and in the other 5 companies, they want you to appoint as an independent director. Answer is possible. Answer is not possible. Now, I will make one small chart so that you can all understand it in one go. Now, listen to this. If you are a normal director in listed company, or if you are a MD or whole-time director in listed company, then in that case, rule is 7. You can become an independent director in the 7 companies in total. It means extra 6 companies also you can accept as a proposal for the independent director. In those extra 6 listed companies, you can also become the independent directors. But if you're a MD or whole-time director in already a listed company, then you can accept independent director position in maximum 3 companies. Are you getting the point? It means 7 has been reduced to 3. In total, if you are already working as a MD or a whole-time director in one company, listed company, then maximum available is Maximum available is 3. But if you are already working as a director in any company, then maximum total available is 7. So 7 will turn into 3 if you are working as an MD or whole-time director in a listed entity. But if you are working as a normal director in a listed entity, then maximum you can join 7 companies as an independent director. I hope all of you understood. Yes. So point number 1, as per Companies Act, how many directorships? A single person can have maximum 20 directorship, but as per LODR, as on 1/4/2019, 8 were allowed, but as on 1/4/2020, now 7 are allowed. But if you are working in a company as a whole-time director or a managing director, then only 3 independent directorships you can accept. But in a company, if you are working as a what do you say, normal director, then 7 independent directorships you can accept. As simple as that. That brings an end to this part. Clear? Yes, sir. Clear. Now, evaluation of independent directors. Now listen to this thing. Whether independent directors are meeting their independence or not. Whether independent directors are meeting their independence or not, that has to be evaluated by the board of directors. So, board of directors of the listed entities have to minimum evaluate whether the independent director is working as an independent director or not. Clear or not? That is called evaluation of independent director. Let me tell you, this is also an amendment. This was not earlier. Now listen to this case. The evaluation of independent director shall be done by the entire board of directors, which shall include performance of the directors. So they will check your performance as an independent director. Okay, as an independent director, are you performing well or not? As an independent director, if you are not performing well, then the board of directors will get in their mind, yes, there is a need to replace this person. First of all, they are going to check your what? Performance. They're going to check your what? Performance. Of which director? Independent director. Point number 1. Plus point number 2, they're also going to check whether you are maintaining the criteria of independence or not. Sir, what do you mean by the criteria of independence? That you need to learn in section number 149, subsection 6 of Companies Act for the Companies Act regulations. And now I'm going to tell you the criteria of being an independent person as per LODR right away, right here. Listen to this very carefully. Are you an independent director? Yes. Board of directors have to check two things on you. They will evaluate two things on you. What are the two things? They will evaluate your performance, and they will also evaluate during your directorship as an independent directors, were you maintaining your independence criteria requirements or not? Because say for example, at the time of appointment, you were independent, but later on you did something which disqualified you as an independent director. There might be a chance or not. So independent means what? No financial relationship, no family relationship, no promoter relationship, nothing like that. That we are going to understand below. So fulfillment of independence criteria is specified in these rules and regulations, right or not? Next one. Very important point. Sir, recommendation of the board to the shareholders. This is also an amendment. So what do you mean by recommendation of the boards to the shareholders? The statement to be annexed to the notice as referred in subsection 1 or 102 of the Companies Act 2 for each item of special businesses to be transacted at a general meeting shall also set forth clearly the recommendation of the board to the shareholders on each of specific matters. On each of which matters? Specific matters, right? Now, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that is that whenever the board of directors are taking any kind of special businesses to be transacted, it is the responsibility of the board of directors to intimate that via notice in an agenda to the shareholders. That is what the small amendment relating to this part. You just go through this amendment, you will automatically understand. Correct, everyone? Yes, sir. We understood. Now, very important point. So, what do you mean by what do you mean by very important point? Now, there is one exemption point here. Sir, what do you mean by exemption point? Now, listen to this thing. If you are a Section 8 company, if you are a which company? You are a Section 8 company. If you are a private limited company, if you are a which company? A private limited company. And if you are an IFSC, if you are INNSF private limited company, IFSC private limited company, International Financial Service Centers. So, sorry, if you are a Section 8 company, if you are a private limited company, or if you are a IFSC public company. Sir, what are the three exemptions have been given? Now listen to this very carefully. If you are a Section 8 company, generally a normal company has to conduct how many board meetings? Sir, 4 board meetings. Now, what is should be the gap between the two meetings? Maximum 120. So, approximately, can I say that quarterly one meeting will be there? Approximately, yes, sir, quarter. But in case of Section 8 company, one meeting in 6 months is enough. If you are a Section 8 company, then one meeting in 6 months is enough. You need not do the 4 board meetings. Every 6 calendar year months, every 6 calendar months, if you are conducting one meeting for a Section 8 company, it is very much allowed. But if you are an IFSC public company, or you are a private company, or you are which company? Private company. If you are a IFSC public company, सर पहले बता दूं IFSC है क्या? International Financial Service Centers Public Company. If you are an International Financial Service Center Public Company and you are a private company, then it shall hold. Now, generally, a normal company must hold the first board meeting before the incorporation. After the incorporation, do we have to conduct our first board meeting or not? Yes, sir. Within how many days? Sir, within 30 days. But here, that concept is within 60 days. What is the concept? Within 60 days, right or not? So, the first board meeting is not within 30 days from the incorporation. The first board meeting within 60 days from the incorporation, right or not? And thereafter, how many board meetings we have to conduct? 4 board meetings in a calendar year. Thereafter also 2 board meetings in a calendar year. Correct, everyone? Remember one thing, if you are a Section 8 company, then you have to conduct one board meeting every 6 months. It means 2 board meetings in a calendar year, gone. But if you are an International Financial Service Center public company, and if you are a private company, then the first board meeting since incorporation generally is required to be conducted within 30 days. But in case of IFSC public company and private company, it is to be conducted within 60 days. Generally, every calendar year you have to conduct the 4 board meeting, but here you have to conduct the 2 board meeting. This is what the exemption given to whom and whom. This is what the exemption given to the Section 8 company, to the IFSC public company, and to the private company. Clear, everyone? Yes, sir. We are clear. I hope now you are able to understand. It is very easy topic. It is just that there are so many provisions. That's why this chapter itself is an ocean. Very important chapter. And it will give you the knowledge, inherent knowledge, what actually is happening in the listed entities. Clear, everyone? Clear, everyone? Yes? Okay. Yes. So shall we move to the next topic? Yes, sir. We can move to the next topic. Now, who is an independent non-executive director? Who is an independent non-executive director? But let me tell you one thing. This is just a small definition of independent director which is given in front of you. This is not the definition of Companies Act section number 149 subsection 6. Companies Act section number 149 subsection 6 is a very huge definition. But reading this small definition, you will automatically understand what do you mean by independent director? Why there is so much of hype of this independent director when it comes to audit committee and corporate governance. Shall we do it? Yes, sir. So apart from receiving the remuneration, he should not have any kind of material or pecuniary relationship with the listed entity. The first requirement is, apart from your remuneration, you are not having any kind of pecuniary relationship with the listed entity, its holding, its subsidiary, or its associate, or with its promoters or with its directors during the 2 immediately preceding financial years or during the current financial year. So point number 1 understood or not? So point number 1, what it is saying, apart from receiving your remuneration, the independent director should not have any kind of pecuniary relationship. मतलब क्या होता है? Other than remuneration, if you are getting any kind of source of income. So that pecuniary relationship is not required to be there with the listed entity in which you are an independent auditor other than your remuneration. Then in its holding also you should not have, in its subsidiary also you should not have, in its associate also you should not have, with its promoters also you should not have, with its director also you should not have pecuniary relationship in the last two preceding financial years, and as well as the current year. So current year and the last 2 years you should not have any kind of pecuniary relationship with the holding subsidiary, associate, and the directors and promoters in the last two preceding financial year and the current financial year, other than your remuneration. Right? Point number one. So that makes you more independent. Such independent director, either by himself or with any of his relatives, should not be a material supplier, service provider, customer, lessee of a listed entity, and should not also be having a substantial shareholding of the listed entity. Right? Now listen to this point. They are saying that you should not be a supplier, you should not be a customer, you should not be a lessor, you should not be a lessee, you should not be a service provider, neither you nor your relative relating to that listed company. If you are having any lessor, lessee, service provider, supplier, customer relationship with that listed company, you are not eligible to be appointed as a which director? Independent director. Clear, everyone? And you should not be holding any kind of substantial interest in the company. Now, neither you nor your relative was the promoter of the listed entity or its holding or subsidiary or associate company or the member of the promoter group of the listed entity who is not a non-independent director in any other company on the board, which any independent director of the listed company is an independent director. Now, this is a very complicated point. Now, try to understand this point. Who is or was not, matlab neither I am a promoter, I'm not a promoter of the listed entity right now, or I was not a promoter of the listed entity or its holding or its subsidiary or associate company, or a member of the promoters group. Neither I am a promoter nor I'm a member of promoters group of the listed entity. So I should not be the promoter of the listed entity in which I am going to be proposed as an independent director, or its holding, or its subsidiary, or its associate, or I am also not a member of promoters group of a listed entity. Right or not? That also point. Who is not a non-independent director of another company. I should not be a non-independent director of another company on the board of which any non-independent director of the listed company is an independent director. Try to understand this point. Very complicated point. Who is not an independent director of another company? He is not this independent director who is proposed as an independent director in Reliance India Limited. We are talking about that. So suppose I am talking about my independent director candidature in the Reliance India Limited. So I am not. Now I should not be a non-independent director of another company on the board of which any non-independent director of the listed entity is an independent. Are you getting the point? Now listen. I am I am proposed to be the independent director in Reliance India Limited. I am a non-independent director of Infosys. I am a non-independent director of what? Infosys. Are you getting the point? Now, in the Infosys board of directors, there is another non-independent. There is another non-independent director. There is another non-independent director who is a independent director, who is the independent director of Reliance India Limited. I am proposed to be a independent director of Reliance India Limited. I am a non-independent director in the Infosys company. In the Infosys company, there is another non-independent director who is an independent director in the Reliance India. Clear? So if you are not clear, so there is no problem. Just mug up this point. Now read. who is not a non-independent director of another company, right or not? And on the board of which any non-independent director of the listed company is an independent director. Now listen, let's make it very clear to you. Okay, now let's make it very, very clear to you. Okay, I am a director of, let's write, I am proposed to be a director of Reliance India Limited. I am a non-independent director of Infosys. In the Infosys board, in the Infosys board, there is one independent director. In the Infosys board, there is one independent director on the board of which a non-independent director of the listed company is an independent director. In the Infosys board, there is one independent director who is a non-independent director of Reliance. This is what you have to understand. Clear? So after this also, if you're not understanding, then in that case just mug it up. I'm telling you now, it is very difficult to understand the definition of independent director. So independent director, basically you should have an idea that independent director is the one who is not having any kind of pecuniary relationship or any kind of a relationship with the company, due to which he has to compromise his independence, right or not? In determining a non-substantial shareholder, he together should not own. Yeah, so that I already told you, he together with his relative should not be what do you say, having a substantial interest. What do you mean by substantial interest? Substantial interest means 2 or more% of the voting rights. If me along with my relative are holding less than 2% of voting rights in the company in which in which I am proposed to be an independent director, then it is fine. But if it is 2% or more along with my relative or I alone, then in that case I will not be treated as an not be proposed as an independent director. Clear everyone? Yes, clear. Now there are major topics relating to what? Sir, relating to remuneration of a director. Relating to what? Sir, relating to the remuneration of a director. Yes, very, very important topics relating to remuneration of a director, and I can guarantee you that you will not be able to understand it very easily. But I will try my level best to make you understand very easily this remuneration part. Shall we start? Yes, sir, we can start. Basically, all pecuniary relationships or the transactions of the non-executive director vis-a-vis the listed entity shall be disclosed in the annual report. First of all, the annual report of the company requires that we have to disclose everything relating to the remuneration of non-executive directors. So it is a LODA requirement that a listed company's annual report should give the information about the all remuneration related points of a non-executive directors. So what are those things? Point number one, criteria of making payments to the non-executive directors. This may be disseminated on the listed entity's website and referenced drawn thereto in their annual report. In addition to disclosures under the Companies Act, the following disclosures of the remuneration of the directors shall be made in the section on the corporate governance of the annual report. All the elements of the remuneration package of the individual directors summarized under the major groups as salary, benefits, bonuses, stock option, pension, how much is the fixed component, how much is the performance linked incentives, then service contracts, notice period, surveillance fees, and stock options details, if any, whether issued at a discount, as well as the period over which accrued and which exercisable. Now see, basically what they are saying that Companies Act is saying that directors, non-executive directors remuneration is required to be disclosed in the annual report. That is what the disclosure is required in the annual report, but there are some additional disclosures also required. So what are the additional disclosures? And that is not only relating to NEDs, non-executive directors. These additional disclosures are required for all directors. So what are the disclosures required? how much salary we are paying them, how much benefit they are getting, how much stock options they are getting, category wise. Are you getting the point? How much salary they are getting, how much benefits they are getting, how much stock they are getting, how many stock options they are getting, how much pension they are getting. Category wise, we have to give the details of their salary, their benefits, their stock options, and pensions. Then, how much is their fixed salary, plus how much is their what do you say, incentive based salary, how much bonuses we are paying to them, because a large amount of expenditure. Understand one thing, sir, why we need to disclose a director's remuneration? That might be the question in your mind. So remember one thing, large chunk of expenditures are always devoted towards the director's remuneration. If you might have heard it somewhere, directors take a lot of money has to be paid to the directors, because we have to retain the asset in the company. For that we have to spend a lot of money on these people called directors and KMPs. So how much salary we are paying them, how much benefit we are giving them, how much stock options, pensions, fixed salary, incentive based salary, bonuses, incentives, right or not, notice period, how much severance fees they are charging, how much is the service period. Each and everything relating to the directors must be given in what disclosures in the annual report relating to all the directors, category wise. Non-executive directors are getting how much salary, executive directors are getting how much salary, directors are getting how much salary, whole time director is getting how much salary, managing director is getting how much salary. So these are the various disclosures relating to the directors are required to be given. So let us read what they are actually telling you. Now see, all the pecuniary relationships of the transactions of the non-executive directors vis-a-vis the listed company shall be disclosed in the annual report. Criteria for making the payments to the non-executive directors. Alternative, this may be disseminated on the listed entity website and reference drawn thereto in the annual report. So one more thing, you can say that yes, criteria of payment, how we are making the payment to them, that is required in the annual report plus the website of the listed company. Other than that, they are saying that he did in addition to the disclosure required under Companies Act, following other disclosures are required, also required for whom? For the all other directors on the corporate governance of the annual report. So all the elements of the remuneration, right? All the elements of the remuneration means what? Ki how much is the individual director's salary, benefits, bonuses, stock option, pension? What is their fixed component? I already told you. What is their incentive link based performance linked based top money? What they are getting? How much is their service contract, notice period, severance fees, stock option details, if any, whether issued at discount or not? So all the informations are required to be given in which report? Annual report. So on the left side, I'm now giving the notes. So make sure that you are updated with that, right? Now, approval of remuneration of the board of directors. Approval of remuneration of the board of directors. Hello. So now we have to understand the next topic relating to what? Approval of remuneration of directors. Remember one thing, it is also very highly important topic. Little bit tricky, but very important topic. Now see, there are two types of directors. One are known as non-executive directors, which I already told you, who are not into the full employment with the company. One are known as executive directors. One are known as which directors? Executive directors. The one is known as non-executive directors and one is known as executive directors. Now, either you are a non-executive director or you are an executive director. Approval for paying the remuneration and fixing your remuneration is required to be carried out by passing a special resolution in the general meeting. It means shareholders' permission via special resolution is required कि how much remuneration is to be paid to the non-executive director or how much remuneration is to be paid to the executive director. But remember one thing, for paying sitting fees, no remuneration approval is required. For paying sitting fees, sir, sitting fees क्या होता है? Sitting fees is something what we pay to the directors for coming to the board meetings, sitting in the board meetings, taking the decisions and attending the board meetings. Are you getting the point? That is called sitting fees. That is a different concern. So remember one thing, for remuneration we need a approval, but for the sitting fees we do not need an approval. But in the approval also, we have to understand when approval is required to which limit, where approval is not required. So that we have to concentrate in the next topic. Now see, approval of remuneration of directors. All the fees, compensation, if any, paid to the non-executive directors, including independent directors. So if you are a non-executive directors or you are an independent director, including independent directors, shall be fixed up by board of directors. It will be fixed up by whom? Board of directors. But later on requires the previous approval of shareholders by passing a which resolution? Special resolution. Shall require a previous approval of shareholders in the general meeting. The shareholder resolution shall specify the limits for the maximum number of stock options that can be granted to the non-executive directors in a financial year and in aggregate. So it means if you are a non-executive director, so if you are a non-executive director including independent director, if you are a non-executive director including independent director, then in that case board of directors will first fix your remuneration. But this fixing of the remuneration will only is required to be given only when it is approved with the prior approval of shareholders. So first you have to take the prior approval of shareholders for fixing the remuneration of the non-executive directors as per the LODR regulations in the listed entities. So remember one thing, wherever we are doing everything in this chapter, everything is applicable to the listed entities. Clear? So everything is applicable to which entities? Listed entities. So again, LODR regulation says that if you are a non-executive director and if you are an independent director, board of directors will fix your remuneration. But before the board of director fix your remuneration, prior approval of shareholders in the general meeting is required. Right or not? And the approval shall also tell the maximum limit of stock options which are required to be allotted to them. So this approval is for the remuneration as well as the stock option, right? But as I already told you, this approval is required for the sitting phase or not required for the sitting phase? Sir, not required for the sitting phase. The requirement of the obtaining prior approval of the shareholder in general meeting shall not apply to the payment of which fees, sitting fees to the non-executive directors if made within the limits prescribed. Now, let me tell you the limits also. It is up to rupees 1 lakh per director per meeting. If you are paying up to rupees 1 lakh per director per meeting, no approval of the shareholder is required. So approval when required for the stock options, for the remuneration to the non-executive directors, independent directors who will fix board of directors, and prior approval of shareholder is required. Clear? Yes. Now listen to this thing. Now, suppose there is one. Now see, suppose there is one particular single non-executive director. Now suppose there is one Mr. A. There is one Mr. A who is non-executive director. There is one Mr. A who is a non-executive director. This particular non-executive director is getting a remuneration. Is getting a remuneration which is more than 50% of total remuneration, which is more than 50% of total remuneration of all non-executive directors. So Mr. A is there who is getting one remuneration which is more than 50% of the total remuneration paid to the non-executive directors. In that case, every year special resolution is required to be passed. Did you understand the provision? If you are a such non-executive director, the payment to whom for the remuneration is exceeding the 50% of the total remuneration paid to the non-executive directors, then every year a special resolution is required to be passed in this context. Clear? Now read this point. The approval of shareholders by the special resolution shall be obtained every year in which the annual remuneration payable to a single non-executive director exceeds 50% of the total annual remuneration payable to all non-executive directors, giving details of the remuneration thereof. Clear, everyone? Very super clear, sir. So there is one particular non-executive director whose remuneration is more than 50% of the total remuneration of the other directors. every year special resolution is required to be passed. That is what we have written. Who is that director? Mr. A is that non-executive director. Clear everyone? Yes sir, we are clear. Next one. The fees or compensation payable to the executive directors now, not non-executive. Now we are going to talk about the executive director. So suppose there is one executive director to whom we are paying a remuneration which is more than 5 crores or 2.5 crores of the net profit of the company, whichever is higher. There is an executive director to whom we are paying a remuneration which is more than 5 crores or 2% of the net profits of the company, whichever is higher. In that case also special resolution is required. Or if there are more than such kind of executive directors, if there are more than such executive directors, then if the remuneration payable to such, suppose there are 2 to 3 such executive directors whose remuneration is 5 crores or 2.5% of the net profits, whichever is higher. So say for example, let us take an example. If you are a, now this is for the non-executive director. Now we are talking about the which director? Executive or non-executive? Now we are talking about the executive director. Now suppose you are an ED now, executive director, and your salary or remuneration is more than what? 5 crores or 2.5 crores of the net profit of listed company. Then in that case, whichever is higher of these two figures, and your salary is more than that, then in that case again special resolution in the general meeting is required. But suppose this was for Mr. A, but suppose like Mr. A there are so many other directors. Suppose there is one Mr. B also who is like Mr. A, there is one Mr. C also who is like Mr. A. Now there are 3 people. Now if the salary payable to A plus B plus C, 3 such executive director, is more than 5% of net profits of the company, then also special resolution in the general meeting is required. So there are total 3 provisions I told you. If you are a single non-executive director and the salary remuneration paid to you is more than how much? Is more than 50% of the total remuneration payable to the non-executive director, sir, every year special resolution in the general meeting is required. If you are an executive director and the remuneration payable to you is 2 crores or sorry 2 is remuneration payable to you is more than 5 crores or 2.5% of the net profits, whichever is higher, then also special resolution in general meeting is required. But if persons like you are more there in the listed entity and the total salary payable to such kind or category of the directors is more than 5% of the net profits of the company, then also the special resolution in the general meeting required. Now see, regarding the executive director, regarding the non-executive director, we have already understood. So this point was relating to the non-executive directors. So this point is relating to non-executive director and this point is relating to executive directors, right? So fee or compensation payable to executive directors who are promoters or members of the promoter group shall be subject to the approval of shareholder by passing a special resolution. When the annual remuneration payable to such executive director, single person they are talking about, exceeds 5 crores or 2.5% of the net profits of the listed entity, whichever is higher, or where there is more than such directors, more than one such director, the aggregator annual remuneration to such director exceeds the 5% of the net profits of the listed entity, then what is required? Special resolution in the general meeting is required. That is what is there in front of you. So remember one thing, these notes are definitely going to help you out better when you are doing the audit committee chapter. That's why I'm going very slow in the audit committee chapter, right sir? Now, approval of the shareholder under this provision shall valid only till the expiry of the term of such director. Once the such director's expiry will be over of the term, then another approval is required. Clear everyone? Yes sir, clear. In this context, what the auditor should do? In this context, what the auditor should do? Now we are going to talk about whose responsibility. Now we are going to talk about auditor's role. Whose role? Auditor's role. What is the auditor's role? Now read. what the auditor is doing. Ascertain from the minutes of the board of directors meeting, shareholders meeting, relevant agenda notice is explanatory whether the remuneration to the non-executive directors have been decided after passing prior approval of the shareholders in the meeting or not. So first thing he has to check. First thing he has to check minutes of board meeting, shareholders meeting to understand that remuneration was fixed by board with the prior approval of shareholders. Clear everyone? Yes, so that he has to see. Second thing what he has to see. Now see, refer to the articles of association wherever applicable. So second point is whether AOA authorizes or not. AOA authorizes that or not. That is the second role of the auditor to check. Third one, what he has to check, examine the report of the board of directors on the corporate governance to be included in the annual report of the company and certain whether the same contains the disclosure with respect to the remuneration of directors and compensation to the non-executive directors. So listen to this one thing. So he has to check report on compliance corporate governance. Report on which government? Corporate governance. He has to check the report on corporate governance whether such disclosures which we have done above. Do you remember the disclosures? Fixed remuneration, incentive based remuneration, salary, benefit, pension. Those disclosures we have to give or not? Service period, notice period, all those disclosures what we are given above, that is being given in the annual report or not. This is what the role of auditor in context with remuneration to the executive directors and non-executive directors. Clear everyone? Yes sir, it is clear. Now that we already understood, sir, if you are an auditor of a listed entity and as per IND-AS, in your listed entity some other companies are getting consolidated for their accounts, then in that case you have to do the limited review over those companies whose accounts are getting consolidated as per IND-AS requirement. That I already told you. The statutory auditor, just for your understanding, I'm reading it again. The statutory auditor of a listed company shall undertake a limited review of the audit of all the entities and companies whose accounts are to be consolidated with the listed company as per AS and IND-AS in accordance with the guidelines issued by the SEBI on this matter. Consequently, it is applicable to whom? Sir, it is applicable to all the listed entities whose equity shares and convertible securities are listed on the recognized stock exchange, to the statutory auditors of such entities. It means this responsibility is applicable to whom? The statutory auditors of those listed entities whose designated securities are listed on the any recognized stock exchange, as well as all those entities whose accounts are to be consolidated with the listed entity, and the statutory auditors of the entities whose accounts are getting listed with the consolidated with the listed entity. So they are saying that limited review is applicable to whom? So limited review is applicable to the statutory auditor of listed entity, and it is also applicable to the statutory auditor of those companies whose accounts are getting consolidated with the listed entity. Clear everyone? So this brings an end to what? The discussion on the limited review.